All right. Hey, all. Thanks for joining. Thank you for attending you in person. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is the Residential Solar Standard Offer Stakeholder Meeting number 4. Tim Harvey, Director, will be presenting here. We always start off our meetings with a safety moment. Since UT football is about to kick off, we have a game against San Jose State on September 6th. So if you're going out supporting UT football, stay hydrated. Remember your sunblock, sunglasses, hat for the season's first few games. Darrell K. Royal Stadium gets mighty toasty. Stay informed. You can always text UT Guest to 888-777 and to stay informed for emergencies. They also have a Live Safe app where you can receive alerts. You can text police dispatchers or get assistance. They have an emergency phone line, and you can make emergency calls from the stadium itself and the office on the ground floor. In case of an emergency, listen for instructions from the public address announcer. The ushers and law enforcement will direct you to the closest safe exit, and you can aid patrons who may need assistance. Specific topics can be addressed within UT's football fan. All right. Thank you very much. With that, I will turn it over to Tim. Start with the agenda.
All right, y'all. Welcome to number 4. We're going to go through some things, give an update. Oops. We're going to give an update on the standard offer for commercial. We're going to give an update on Solar for All and tax incentives. And then we're going to go into the residential standard offer, talk about our engagement, the financial focus group, survey results, and feedback requests. And then we'll have an open discussion. Okay, it worked just a second ago, I know. There we go. Okay, commercial solar standard offer. So we're still kind of working with the same set of projects as last time, I assume. Maybe a couple trickled in. We have 10 encumbered projects, and that's for about 5.25 megawatts. Some of those are being installed. Some of them are really close already to final inspection. And then we've got 25 total projects for a total of 15.2 megawatts. And all of those projects are seemingly moving forward. So the largest of the projects is 750 kW AC, and the smallest is 358 kW AC. We have 25 registered contractors and 8 are pending in that program. So that program is still moving forward pretty successfully. But what is not moving forward successfully, unfortunately, is Solar for All. The EPA released guidance on, let's see, I think it was like August 7th. Their points, the key points of their guidance is that at first they're stopping all authority for spending for Solar for All and rescinding the funds that have been appropriated. They are citing that the federal budget repealed the Section 134 of the Clean Air Act, which eliminated the statutory authority and they're rescinding all funds for Solar for All programs, and also pretty much any other program that would have supported efforts towards reducing climate change. So that Clean Air Act, 134 of the Clean Air Act, was the foundation for the EPA to have programs that address climate change. So they've undermined that foundation completely. So this is a sad announcement for us and our stakeholders. We were looking to potentially do 2,500 homes with solar and storage, and create 3,000 low-income customers. The ability for 3,000 low-income customers to have 20% bill savings. Workforce development, community ownership, resiliency is all part of the program they've cut the funding for. So that said, we've, in the past year and a half or 2 years or so, we've made a lot of stakeholder engagements and made a lot of progress internally and externally through our engagements towards building a program with these qualities. And we don't want to let all of that go to waste. We're refusing to do that. We want to keep our relationships with our stakeholders. We want to see how we can be creative to keep the momentum and keep those initiatives moving forward. So it could be that some of these efforts that were in Solar for All migrate to this effort. That's my hope. I want to have a holistic program. I want more community engagement through the same style of community engagement efforts that we were looking at through Solar for All. Potentially, if we can manage workforce development into this, I think that's also a great benefit to the community. And of course, resiliency and sustainability as well. So, we're starting fresh kind of in a way as we reimagine what we can do and how we can integrate things. But I want you all to be thinking about that. Obviously, we can't move Solar for All forward without the $32 million that was backing it. But I think that there are parts of it that we can, and we're going to try our best to do that. So with that, I'll just open up the floor for any comments or questions about Solar for All.
We have a question in the chat that says, what is an encumbered project? I typed up in the chat, but basically, project is encumbered once the initial documentation is reviewed and approved. Once we have that, we're waiting for the contract and an approved DGPA. Once we have all of that documentation, that's when we can issue the letter of approval. So hopefully that answers your question. And then Kaiba, question about the commercial standard offer projects. How many companies have encumbered projects and how many account for the 25 projects?
I have a quick answer for that. Is
I
it
want
2
to
or
say
3?
it's more like 5. It's not quite like 10, but it's more than 2.
Okay.
Okay.
5. Something like that.
Okay.
I see David's hands up. Go ahead, David.
Just real quick, without saying anything too political, I'm just going to ask a question though. Is there any possibility here, Tim, that this is like the terrace where, one day he's saying this is off and then it's on and it's off, or is this kind of more of a moot project at this point?
Are you talking about Solar for All?
Yes, sir. Yeah. And what I mean is, he does something one day and then next week.
Officially, the program is on hold. We're not seeing a whole lot of, light of day through the cracks in the door on this one at this point. It could potentially be ruled illegal or whatever and rescinded. And that's being explored. I think that Harris County, who is the lead, is partnering with other leads from Solar for All. There are 60 to see, what kind of efforts they're going to have on the backside of this, and there are definitely concerns of irreparable damage that's done when the federal government has a contract and then does not honor that contract. I think, at a bare minimum, it hinders the effectiveness of grants as we move forward, because grants are no small effort for those who undertake them. And, speaking from Austin Energy's standpoint, we probably put thousands of hours of man hours into Solar for All at this point. And so, just practically speaking, I think that we're going to be a bit reticent to take on more grant efforts, given the potential uncertainty of grants. And that's a, kind of an intangible but irreparable damage that this action causes. Not only that, I think there's potential that, contractors that are bidding on grant funded efforts will see this and start to build in risk into their contracts. How can you fix that? I don't know that you can. So it's these kind of concerns that are, weighing heavy on us, as well as Harris County and the other 60 recipients of the grant.
Jerry says, is the current solar standard offer program affected by their sending of the funds?
Yes, the current solar standard offer program is on hold at minimum, and probably.
Sorry, standard offer, not solar.
Oh, standard offer. Sorry. I need to put a nickel into the can, I guess. But we often confuse solar standard offer and Solar for All, as everybody does. And so it's a joke around here that we put a nickel in the jar every time we do it. So it does not affect the standard offer program. So that will continue on. That rate is designed to live into perpetuity regardless of politics. But that said, what will affect that grant, and maybe it's my next slide. Oh, sorry. Are tax incentive changes. So as you likely know, the tax incentives for solar, wind, electric vehicles, and pretty much any carbon addressing technology are going away on a faster schedule than what was originally planned. So, for example, the residential tax credit expires on 12/31 of this year, and the tax credit will be based on expenditures prior to that date. And then for commercial, it's a little bit different. If the project has started by July 4th of 2026, then it may be eligible for safe harbor, in which case they would have 4 years to put it in service, or it must be placed in service by December 31st of 2027. So that is going to be impacting commercial projects pretty soon, kind of depending on what scale you're looking at. That's already potentially impacting utility scale projects because they have a lot longer lead times. But, we'll see that pressure being put on commercial customers in the pretty near future, and residential customers are already feeling that pressure. So, that's going to play into this conversation as well. Any questions about tax incentives? Oh, and by the way, we've reconfirmed that residential standard offer developers would be unable to receive the solar property tax exemptions because it's an income producing project. Any questions about tax incentives or exemptions?
Smith has your hand up. You want to come up, mute?
Yeah, thank you. My question is really back to the previous slide and just about the workforce development piece. I'm Park Smith. I'm CEO for American Youth Works, and we have the Casa Verde Builders and the Youth Build programs that do workforce development and have the solar training program going. We are yeah, so I'm just curious if you have any ideas on strategies. You mentioned that some of these elements we really want to keep going. And is there a venue under which we could further discuss collaborative grant writing to other grant resources or something along the lines of how you might intend to continue the workforce development pillar of the Solar for All program?
Yeah, so through Solar for All, and the way that we had imagined it, we would go through the city's efforts to do workforce development. So we're going to see if that's still viable in some way, shape, or form. But we're definitely interested to hear from stakeholders like yourself on what we can work on to create other potential paths to workforce development. We see it as a value add to the community, which we're very, very interested in. Anytime we can do that, it doesn't necessarily go directly towards the goal of this program, but we're here to not only achieve our goals as set out by council through the resource generation plan, but also to maximize benefits in the community. So we think workforce development makes a lot of sense, not only for the community, but for the industry. And so, yeah, let's have more conversations, and feel free to chime in with potential, suggestions and routes that we could take to further that effort.
Great, thank you. I'll put my contact info in the chat, and maybe we can connect afterward. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. Thank you. Okay. So previous stakeholder meetings on the January 29th, April 2nd, and June 18th. We set up a financial focus group where we kind of discussed solar, or the residential standard offer and its viability. We essentially, do I have a slide on that, Sam? I think so. Okay, I'll get into that. And then residential customer survey. So we have a goal of determining the viability of an approach by the end of this fiscal year, which is September 30th, with a potential launch in FY26. That said, there's been a lot of changes to the landscape, and we may have to do more adjustment and refinement to get to that point, but we're still targeting that date. Trying to get there. So the financial focus group, some of the key takeaways were that the current price point for the standard offer, which, as you will recall, is basically Austin Energy putting its best foot forward, identifying all of the avoided cost benefits to the utility and passing them through in the form of a rate, so that the utility is paying as much as we can without exceeding, and so that we can remain cost neutral in the proposition, and that way, customers aren't adversely affected. So that said, that price is too low for residential projects because they, even aggregated, can't really achieve those economies of scale and get down to that price point. So there needs to be value added to make it work. So residential projects would probably need to be aggregated as one approach. Potentially battery inclusion could help with the value proposition, but we still need to explore batteries. And by the way, that was an effort that we were going to fund through solar for all. But we do plan to continue with that effort. We've already drafted our RFP, so it's really close to being out on the street. And we will move forward with that battery analysis so that we can make informed decisions with this and other battery programs. So we need to continue to resolve some questions around metering configuration. And so basically, is that meter going to be ahead of the customer's meter or behind it? And how would that work in different scenarios? How is Austin Energy's battery program going to be designed? You know, we're looking to determine those values until we really know what the values of the different operation schemes are and what operation schemes cannibalize the other or maybe stack on to the other, you know, what that looks like. We need to have a full analysis of that before we can make informed decisions there. How will community solar program be redesigned? So we've had a community solar program stakeholder meeting, and the first meeting was really just a kickoff to kind of give all the background on community solar, how the current program works, why there's an urgency and a need to change the current community solar program structure. And for those of you who may not have attended that meeting, in a nutshell, it's because our portfolio is moving from a fixed cost portfolio to a variable cost portfolio that tracks Austin Energy's avoided costs. So while there could have been a hedge, or there could be a hedge with fixed cost projects, there will be no hedge with standard offer projects. So we need to form a community solar program that takes that into account and can work with that. And hopefully then another part of that is to potentially collect premiums for participation in that community solar program that could then be reinvested in some way to the standard offer to help perpetuate that offering and the program. So we put out a survey and we got some results back. It's not the number of results that we really wanted to see, but we did have 138 homeowners reply. We may put this out broader. But for the replies that we got, 21% of them own solar, 4% own batteries. 40% are interested in purchasing solar panels, and their main reason is to help the environment, and then to lower electricity bills and prepare for outages. 50% are interested in purchasing batteries, and the main reason for that is for power outages, increase energy independence, and then lower the electric bill. Reasons why solar might not be a good fit for customers for these 138. 44% said high cost, and 29% said their roof is not suitable. And reasons why batteries might not be a good fit. We've got 44% saying high cost and 28% saying that they just need more information before deciding. So that's something that we're working on, is that piece of that amount of information that we can provide to them. How interested are you in participating in a homeowner program that offers the following? Install solar panels and battery systems at your home for no cost to you, utilizes equipment that is owned and maintained by a third-party provider, and provides backup power during an outage. So 48% are extremely or very interested, and 37% moderately or slightly interested. So that's 75% of these 138 customers would be interested in an offering like that. So basically, you know, that idea is that they become hosts, and their benefit is resiliency. So those, I think those are some interesting results, and they kind of tell us, that, I think there's a market, batteries are interesting here, and, could potentially, through the resiliency that the battery and solar can provide, might be benefit enough for customers to consider hosting a system just for that, resiliency benefit.
Cayuga says, how is the survey distributed?
Via email to a random sample for data analytics.
Did you hear that online?
I'll type it in the chat.
Via
There was an
email,
email.
a random sample.
Yeah.
Okay.
Via our data analytics team.
Thank you.
Mhm.
What percentage responded?
That's a good question. I don't have the total number that they sent it to. I believe they sent it to, they were looking for 400 responses. So, yeah, I don't know the total number that they sent it to. Seems to work on 500. But
We may send it out more broadly to
Yeah.
try to get more responses.
because I think we need 400 to be statistically significant.
We only had 128. Sorry, there's a couple more questions in the chat. I'm just gonna start from the bottom. So Kayla asks, was there just the one meeting for the financial focus group? I asked because I was a super small group at the one meeting I was at. Others may have different perspectives.
This is true. Yes, we've only had one meeting to date. We can set up another. And so anybody on this call will be welcome. We'll send that invitation out next week. We do that? Okay. Well, it won't be for next week, but the invitation can go out next week. Or is that doable?
I think so.
Looking
If
at
you're
the team here.
interested, email solar@officerenergy.com.
Yeah. So we'll shoot for next week.
Okay.
To send that out. And again, we had some great participants on that call, last time. Welcome you back into the call, and even, and extend that invitation broadly out to this whole group if you're interested and have, some ability to provide financial input into, this equation. So.
All right, Jonathan Blackburn says, can you elaborate more on when the RFP will get released, and can you let us know when it will be released?
I can let you know when it's released. I can't say definitive right now when it will be released. We're still in the process of, going through the procedures that we have to go through before doing procurements. So, our procurement team is curating the RFP currently. The RFP has been, I'd say it's at 98% right now. So we're getting really close.
All right, and then Jorge asks, at what price point would this be viable?
Well, that's a good question, and one that we would probably pose to the financial team in the next meeting. I don't think we kind of landed on what that point actually is, but it has to be, it's the point that moves the industry, right? And so, what we have determined is that the current solar standard offer price point is too low for that.
All right, and then, okay, Kayuda says, while I am generally supportive of solar workforce development, it might be worth doing a survey of the local industry to see if companies are having trouble hiring qualified workers. I've been hearing about companies laying people off and furloughing workers, so there might be a glut of local solar workers.
True enough. So, these are, again, like my intention is to move forward with the progress that we made with Solar for All where it makes sense. And, at least at minimum, explore those opportunities to see you know, what makes sense and what doesn't. What I will never support personally are things that aren't pragmatic. You know, I want to be practical. I want to make the best use of the public dollar and program efforts to achieve our goals and provide value to the community. You know, as long as we can check those boxes, then we keep moving forward. But when we get to a point where, you know, the efforts don't produce meaningful returns, then, you know, and maybe it's because there's just not enough demand in the workforce for that. So, you know, again, we'll keep things practical, but let's keep the discussion going for now, at a minimum.
Okay, and then last one, people might want to pay a higher rate to get the additional reliability. And that was also talking about so thank you for that.
For the resiliency,
Yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's true. And you know, that I don't think, I think, you know, if the optimal program is going to try to leverage a reasonable payment from hosting customers if they're willing to pay more for that resiliency, and then take that money and reinvest it into the program to help perpetuate it. So, you know, but it's all about balancing the scales there. You know, if the price is too high and it's not a good offering to the customer, then you're going to have fewer projects. And the whole idea is to have as many projects as we can.
Mhm.
All right.
That's all the questions.
Okay. So let's just kind of move through this list and we'll solicit some feedback from y'all. So obviously the federal tax incentive changes affect program viability here, especially like, I'll just throw something out there under this topic. Like one thing we could consider, and it might kind of push the timeline a bit. It's not going to solve any problems, but potentially like a lease program or a prepaid lease program, some kind of offering, and maybe even standard offer in itself, just because of the commercial ownership of projects, keeps it under the commercial tax credit. So do any of you have an opinion on that? Like how this would sit? I'm not asking for a, you know, I know we're not tax advisors here, but would you say that if you had a residential or a third party has a residential standard offer portfolio out there where they own multiple arrays on separate residential customer rooftops with batteries or whatever, does that sit on the books and in the federal view as a commercial portfolio that would be eligible for commercial tax credits, or a residential portfolio that would?
Nothing in the chat so far.
Yes,
You think it would be commercial?
it has to be contracted. And so I would suggest that given the existing programs as they are, the momentum between residential SSO and solar for all, if we continue to improve, just progress as, you know, an all of the above approach and see what is effective, because that provides the greatest amount of access.
Okay. So, yeah, so that, I mean, it's not like the commercial tax credit is going to be around forever, but certainly is going to be around longer. And we'll get more guidance. We're hoping to get some soon around what constitutes the ability to safe harbor panels and what that looks like. I have a feeling it's not going to be the same as safe harboring has been in the past. But we're waiting to get some more guidance around that. Any other thoughts around federal tax incentive changes and the effect on program viability?
I mean, to the extent that there's uncertainty about what that guidance, how that guidance may emerge, I think so long as it's the final revision of that guidance, then it's something that is manageable. But I would just emphasize that timing is of the essence, whether it's commercial or not. Timing and contracting is of the essence.
Noted.
Jen says, Rewiring America and Energy Safe offer the following guidance. Yeah. Jen.
Yeah, go
your
ahead
hand
and
up.
come off
You wanna
mute.
Come off mute.
Yeah, I wanted to put it in chat, and I know it's a little off topic. My question is more around homeowner-owned panels. Like, what is AE's take on what has to happen by December 31st of this year to qualify for the tax credit before it expires? I reached out to Rewiring America for their guidance, and they offered what I put in the chat, basically saying that they're urging people to make sure that their installs are completed and systems operational by 12/31, regardless of whether they have full payment. And I'm just curious what AE's take is, if you would offer similar guidance.
Unfortunately, no. We can't offer tax guidance, and the only tax guidance that we can offer is to consult a tax professional. So I
Love
have
that
to
line.
be very clear that I cannot give tax guidance. And any tax statement I make is not a professional tax professional statement. So yeah. So I think that, but that's probably the safest advice. My reading of it is that it's based on expenditures. And so, you know, one of the things that I think about, if that's the case, is, you know, how some contractors that might not have the same scruples as others could try to take advantage of that and get customers to pay upfront for services not rendered yet.
Mhm.
And so that is somewhat of a risk in my mind. But one that we want to provide some guidance to our customers as we move forward and refine that message again with the underlying background that Austin Energy can't give tax advice. But, you know, we can kind of point to documents, especially as they come out, that clarify things. And so we'll do that as we move forward.
Okay, appreciate it.
Okay, so batteries it's hard to have the battery conversation for me, for Austin Energy, just because we don't know what we don't know yet. We really need to understand what that value proposition is from top to bottom, so that we can tailor an offering that's not going to inadvertently have negative effects to customers. So, you know, what that means is, you know, in the similar way that we've done the standard offer and value of solar, we're looking to kind of tie the offering to Austin Energy's avoided costs, and have those fully identified, so that we're not potentially, you know, giving more value than what it's worth, and then that puts the non-participating customers at a loss, and we don't want to do that. So we're trying to, you know, make progress and make things better for everybody. So we'll, you know, it's hard to really speak too much more to batteries without that analysis done. But that said, if y'all have any feedback about, batteries being part of this approach, speak up now. Time for you.
David has his hand up. Go ahead, David.
Tim,
Go ahead.
yep. Tim, I don't know if I'm just gonna run this by you first. The third-party inspection thing, kind of relating back to that previous question the young lady had about December 31st deadline. Is this an appropriate time to bring that up, or should we not go down that wormhole?
We can. I don't know if I'll have any solid information there.
Well, I did
yeah,
some
go for
research,
it.
and let me kind of let everybody know what because Tim brought it up, and I was very concerned, especially as a service person. Our inspections in Austin are fantastic. That's why a lot of installers like to go outside of Austin because they don't want to have to go up against, the inspectors in Austin, right? And so you see some really wacky, dangerous stuff. And I got to fix this stuff. When I get out there, these homeowners want, Jesus to do his magic and get everything back working again. So I wrote to Senator Cornyn and Cruz, heard back from Senator Cornyn's secretary, and I put a lot of bullet points and things about, why this is not a good idea. And let me just and Tim, let me know if you want to cut me off to the same point, but I want to just kind of add what kind of describe these two bills. Basically, they just want to set up a third party, John and Joe's permit service, and they're gonna fast track permits. Well, I explained to them, first of all, you have to look at the equipment. They've got to review a single line, and then the installer themselves, they're on usually a 9 month, plan before anything gets. So there's no problem with the process. But what they're literally, the wording of these things, when you read it, is we're just going to take a look at it, and Betty's going to stamp it, and we're just going to say, there you go, there's a permit, and it's going to speed up the solar on the rooftops for all these homeowners that are waiting too long. That as the way I read it, and I looked at different iterations of what these people have written, that's almost exactly what it said. We're just kind of like rubber stamp it. None of these guys are thinking about the fact that you got to go on the roof and open that pass-through box and see if we got Polaris caps that are adequately sized, or do we have the right gauge of conductor. I added all those things in there about, are you going to make sure these people do that? Are you going to oversee that? Who is going to be in charge of that part of it? So I just wanted to add that because with this deadline of December 31st, I'm a little worried they're also going to try to railroad something like this, like, well, see, this is why we need to have this third-party inspection thing. I've said enough. Maybe we can get some discussion going on it, but that's it.
Yeah. So there are some provisions in that, in those bills that give municipalities the ability to enforce their criteria. And so I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but I can tell you that we're keenly interested in enforcing our criteria. So to that end, and I'm very interested in maintaining our really good track record of safety and solar. And so you're right, we see all kinds of stuff out there, stuff that should have never been even considered to be installed. And stuff that just shoddy work and stuff that wasn't installed appropriately. We see it all the time. And so that's why we maintain and have always maintained 100% inspections for solar. We need safety for our line workers and field crew. We need safety for y'all, for the electricians out there that are going to be doing work on it in the future, and for the homeowners. So it's all very important.
All right, we got one more comment in the chat. Kaina says, at the last meeting, I raised the topic of including the environmental benefits portion of the value of solar in the residential solar standard offer. I recall that Tim said that it could be added to the next agenda, but I don't see it on the list. Can we discuss that now?
Yeah, let's discuss that now. So for those of you who may not know, societal benefits is an adder to the value of solar. It is not an avoided cost to the utility. It's an avoided cost to society. So from the value of solar's inception in 2011-12, City Council decided that it needed to have an environmental adder. So that was put on, I think originally it was kind of based on customers' willingness to pay for green power programs. But since then, it has evolved. In the 2022 base rate case, we set forth a methodology for assessing the societal benefits. It basically ties two reports together, one being the federal social cost of carbon report, and the second being the EIA's Texas's energy mix report that shows the carbon mix of all of the generation on ERCOT. And so, you know, the idea is that a solar project kilowatt hour is going to displace the Texas mix because that's a kilowatt hour that we don't have to buy off of the Texas energy market through ERCOT. And so that what we've been doing since then is aligning the prevailing social cost of carbon report with the EIA's carbon mix report and setting out those values on an annual basis since then. A little more history. In 2021, we were basing it off of a 2021 report, which was an update to social cost of carbon. Same for 2022. In 2023, there was a update to that report, and it was a major update. They included more values that they hadn't, they had identified, but not necessarily done all the work to include them in the previous reports. They also, in the 2023 report, changed the D-rate factors. So prior to that, it was, I'm going off memory, so hopefully I'm getting this right, but I think it was 1.5% as a very liberal approach, and then up to 5%, which would be a very, very conservative approach. And in the middle of that was 3%. So when we were looking at this during the base rate case, we went the middle of the road, 3%. And the revision and new report that came out in 2023, they changed those D-rate factors to be 1.5%, 2%, and 2.5%, which basically values the future more, and it is more of a conservative approach, or sorry, liberal approach. That said, to align with what we had said before, which was 3%, we chose the highest value, or I should say, the highest discount rate, which is the lowest value, at 2.5%. All that said, so now we're in this kind of, and then with the Trump administration, that values went down to practically zero. So it's very political. We're not real sure what to do on it at this point. If we were to go strictly with the methodology that we've laid out in the base rate case, it would be somewhere around 4.5 cents with the update in 2026. But then, we also have to realize that the next 3 years are probably going to be a zero value. So the next time it updates in 2029, it would probably be closer to 1.4 cents or something like that. So that is the history and, not really solid foundation that the societal benefits currently sits on. And so the question is, can we also include societal benefits into the standard offer rate for residential? And so we considered that with commercial, And basically the work groups at Austin Energy decided that it was not the best idea to include that value in the solar standard offer because it's more akin to a power purchase and not so much a customer program. I can see how residential kind of moves more towards a customer program as it's on residential rather than just commercial and smaller sizes. So interested to hear y'all's thoughts on including societal benefits into the residential standard offer as a value stack.
Carrie, I see your hand up. Do you want to come off mute?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tim, for that background. I mean, I personally think that actually valuing the future is a conservative approach, but I guess it depends on how you think about those words. But yeah, I think Al just put in the chat that we shouldn't that we need to stick with science and not Trump denial when we're doing these calculations. And so I'll just plus one to that. It is unfortunate that, yes, we have now an EPA that is unfortunately going to be putting out information that is just totally wrong, misinformation. So, I think that is something that obviously we'll need to take up in the next rate case but for the immediate, I think the simple thing would be to use the same value that is, being applied to, customer owned installations that get the full value of solar credit. And I do recognize that, that is not an avoided cost to Austin Energy. It is more of an avoided cost to all of us generally. I mean, some of those will ultimately be Austin Energy costs when it comes to climate change, but, I get your point there. And to that, I think it, might be a kind of middle ground to include it, but to have that paid for instead of, having that treated as something that is recovered in the PSA, say, have it come from the energy efficiency services fee, which of course Austin Energy had proposed in the last rate case. And, we thought there were reasons that made it, compelling to keep it where it was. But, I think that's something that I personally would, suggest that for this program would be worth looking at.
Yeah, if we were to include it, I would say that it would almost certainly need to come from the CBC, the customer benefit charge, which is the charge that funds the EES programs. And as such, it would have to be noted that it is a special and limited obligation of the city because we can't encumber future year councils. And so that would be subject to annual budget appropriations. So unfortunately, I don't think there's any way around, putting that kind of caveat there, which then, while it is somewhat certain, it is not totally certain. And, that uncertainty would need to be built in to people's assumptions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, I think, I don't know, so much of this could be in a way subject to future council changes, but fair enough to make a statement on that. I have generally seen council across over the years be very supportive of that fee and the programs that it supports. When there was a proposed increase in spending from those programs this year, and I have not heard any concern about that. To the contrary, I've heard, positive feedback. So I think, yes, what you say is true, but I also wouldn't have a lot of concern that, Austin is going to turn its back on, on that funding stream.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree, but yet it remains a fact that we can't guarantee that number. And so that's just the how it is. Twan?
Well, the avoided cost number isn't guaranteed either, right?
Well, I mean, we have a rate that we anticipate, unless we take the rate away, then, our intent is to maintain that rate into perpetuity. And that's not subject to any kind of political changes. I think only Austin Energy could really change that, as far as I know.
But isn't it, I mean, the way it's set up, it changes every 3 years, right?
But it's
I
based
guess
on, but it changes as per the rate. And it's
Right. I guess
based
I'm
on,
just saying
market
it's not a
realities, et
fixed,
cetera.
yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, quick question. How is, if you could summarize quickly, how is the customer benefit charge calculated and how is it funded?
Yeah. The customer benefit charge is, it basically funds certain budgets within Austin Energy. And so the charge is based on the budgets. And then it's adjusted annually because, it's also a per kWh charge. So depending on the weather and the year would depend on how much we recover, from customers' bill. I'm sorry. So we're always, trying to keep that balanced. And then basically that funds our CAP program. So the customer assistance program, our energy efficiency programs, EV, renewables, pretty much all of our customer and facing energy programs.
So it's a volumetric revenue stream based on kWh sold.
That's right.
Okay, got it.
All right, I know we're at time, so Jen, I'll read your question out loud, and then if we can't get to it, we'll email you. So Jen says, can AE provide any insight on the local solar recycling fee being introduced by some council members on today's budget agenda? How does this relate to the Texas House Bill 3228 and 3229 that introduces statewide solar and wind facility component recycling requirements effective September 1?
All I can say to that is that Austin Energy is and has been working with ARR, Austin Resource Recovery, on this issue. I don't think anything has been solidified in terms of a upfront fee or how that all would work, and how the money would flow and to who and to do what. So at this point, it's still, very infant and, not well established. So I can't really speak out to how that would interface with other bills.
Jen, does that answer your question?
I mean, yes, I mean, partially.
I'm
guess
sorry, I just
curious.
don't have an answer to that
Yeah, that's okay.
question.
That's okay. I'm trying to figure out if what's being introduced locally is duplicative what's now required by state law, or if it's supportive and it's just trying to figure out how to support compliance with the state law at a local level and fund it so that it's sustainable. That's all, but it may just be too
Yeah.
early.
I'm not sure that it was, I think that actually, you know, the idea for that and the initial efforts came before the state law.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily duplicative or in support of.
Okay.
I mean, it might be duplicative. I'm not real super familiar with the state law. I'm gonna have to dig into that. Did you capture the number of that, Sam?
You got it in the chat, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah. I'm gonna
Yeah,
have
sure
to
thing.
read
I'll
up
drop the
on
links
that.
too.
Okay, last question from James. Did Austin Energy submit comments to PUCT docket 54233 distribution interconnection standards?
That would be a great question for the regulatory team. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
James, if you email your question to solar@austinenergy.com, we can get you some more information on that. Does that sound okay? Thanks, James. All right, we're a little bit over, but that's the rest.
Well, more next time. We're gonna set up that financial stakeholders meeting. We're gonna have another meeting in the not too distant future regarding the new community solar program and how that can work. And we'll keep driving more to get, you know, to figure out how we can create value and capture value here, essentially make this work. So thanks y'all for your attendance and your suggestions and ideas, and we'll talk to you next time.